stop scrolling. This is not just a bridge. This is a 625-meter high answer to a canyon that used to trap people, traffic, and time on opposite sides of a mountain. The Huajiang Grand Canyon Bridge opened to traffic on September 28, 2025, and when it did, it cut a crossing that once took tours down to 2 minutes. At 890 meters long, with a 420-meter main span, it became the world's highest bridge at the time of opening, hanging above the Beipan River in Guizhou's brutal mountainous terrain. Now look at that number again, 625 meters. That is not a bridge. That is a vertical challenge to gravity itself. And what makes this insane is that the bridge does not just sit over a gap. It spans a canyon locals call the Earth's Crack. That name alone tells you everything about the kind of landscape engineers we're fighting. This is not a poetic label. This is a warning. A real, accurate, terrifying description of a place where the ground simply ends and the sky begins too soon. You stand at the edge and the canyon does not just drop. It disappears. It swallows light. It swallows sound. It swallows your confidence that roads can exist here at all. This is not flat land where you pour concrete and move on. This is terrain that resists roads, resists shortcuts, and punishes hesitation. Every meter forward costs something. Every calculation carries weight. Every decision made in an engineering office thousands of miles away eventually has to prove itself against wind, gravity, and stone that has been sitting there for millions of years, completely unbothered by human ambition. The bridge is the latest giant structure in Guizhou, a province so dominated by mountains that building infrastructure here has become a full-time war against geography. Huajiang is not an exception. It is the latest proof that, in this region, infrastructure is not about convenience. It is about survival access and economic survival. When roads are slow, the mountain wins. When bridges arrive, everything changes. So here is the real question. How do you build something this extreme? How do you lift steel into a canyon this deep? How do you anchor a structure into mountain faces that have never seen human hands? How do you trust a bridge that hangs higher than many city skyscrapers rise? And how do you make something so massive that it does not just connect two places, but rewrites the entire map of what is possible? The answer starts in 2022, when construction began. 3 years later, the bridge was ready. But the story was never really about the calendar. It was about whether human beings could force precision into a place that was designed by nature to reject it. The project became one of the most ambitious infrastructure builds in modern China, not only because of its height, but because of the combination of scale, terrain, and engineering discipline required to finish it safely. Think about what 3 years means in a canyon like this. 3 years of workers operating at extreme altitude, with wind that does not warn you before it arrives. 3 years of transporting materials through roads that barely exist, into terrain that punishes every vehicle that attempts it. 3 years of solving problems that no textbook fully prepared anyone for, because the canyon has its own rules, and you cannot negotiate with a mountain. You can only out-engineer it. And before a single civilian car crossed it, engineers had to prove the bridge could survive reality. In August 2025, the Huajiang Grand Canyon Bridge completed a major load test. The testing lasted 5 days and confirmed the bridge's structural strength, stiffness, and dynamic performance met safety standards. That matters because a bridge like this does not fail in the abstract. It fails in wind. It fails under movement. It fails under vibration, under sustained pressure, under the kind of weight that only reveals structural weakness after thousands of crossings. So before the bridge was allowed to become famous, it had to first prove it was honest. 5 days of testing. 5 days of machines, instruments, calculations, and real load pushing against the structure that took 3 years to build. 5 days to prove that every decision made during construction was the right one. And it passed. Every metric, every standard, every measure of what a bridge at this height, at this span, in this terrain, must be able to survive. Not barely, not approximately, fully. because the only acceptable result at 625 meters above a river is complete confidence. This is the part most people never think about. When you see the final shot, you see elegance. You see a ribbon of steel suspended in sky. You see headlights gliding across the span. You see a canyon that looks conquered. You see the clean, almost lazy arc of a structure that seems to belong there, as if the canyon always had a bridge and we are only now noticing it. What you do not see is the amount of precision hiding inside the miracle. The bridge is not merely high. It is also the world's longest span steel truss girder suspension bridge in mountainous terrain at 420 meters between supports. That means the span itself is part of the record. The whole structure had to remain stable while stretched across one of the most unforgiving landscapes imaginable. Every joint, every cable, every welded connection had to perform at a level where failure was not a scenario anyone was allowed to plan for. This is not brute force engineering. This is controlled defiance. This is mathematics written in steel and trusted with lives. And that is why the footage is so powerful, because at first glance, it feels impossible. At second glance, it feels strategic. At third glance, it starts to feel inevitable. And at some point after that, it begins to feel personal. Because you start to ask yourself what you have been treating as permanent in your own life. What barriers you have accepted as geography when they were really just a problem nobody had solved yet. That is the magic of a project like this. It does not just impress you. It reprograms the way you think about distance, about resistance, about the boundary between what is and what could be. A two-hour drive becomes 2 minutes. A canyon that once separated communities becomes a fast link. A route that used to drain fuel, time, and patience becomes a clean crossing in the sky. The opening day story was not only about records, it was about compression. Compression of travel time. Compression of isolation. Compression of the giant gap between what people needed and what the landscape allowed. That is why Guizhou keeps appearing in these stories. This province has become globally known for bridge building because the terrain leaves no easy options. If you want roads here, you often need tunnels and bridges on a scale most countries never even attempt. Every other solution fails. Detours cost hours. Tunnels cost decades. Doing nothing costs the most of all because it costs the people who live there their connection to the rest of the world, their access to markets, their access to hospitals, their access to each other. Huajiang is not an engineering trophy. It is an answer to a question people in this region have been asking for generations. How do we get across? How do we stop losing hours to a canyon? How do we participate in a country that is moving fast when our roads move slowly? The bridge does not answer these questions with language. It answers them with steel and cable and a main span that is wider than most people can imagine. And that change is not theoretical. After the opening, Xinhua reported that the bridge was already turning into a tourism draw, with visitors and local interest growing around the structure. That tells you something important. Modern megaprojects are no longer judged only by transportation function. They become landmarks. They become destinations. They become symbols of what a place chose to become. Huajiang is not only a line across a canyon. It is a new image for the region, a new reason to look at Guizhou and see ambition instead of obstacle. Now imagine opening day. The bridge is finished. The tests are passed. The certifications are signed. The canyon is still there, exactly where it has always been, exactly as deep and exactly as wide as it has always been. But now it has a line across it. A clean, permanent, load, tested world record line. And that line changes everything about what the canyon means. Cars begin to move. The old route starts to feel like a memory from a different era. A journey that once swallowed 2 hours of a person's day is suddenly reduced to 2 minutes. And in that instant, the bridge is no longer a construction project. It is a before and after story. The kind of transformation people remember because they can feel it in their own schedules, their own commutes, their own lives. Not in the abstract, not as a statistic, but as time returned to them that the canyon used to take, That is what makes this kind of story so powerful. Not the steel, not the height, not even the record. It is the emotional conversion of enormous scale into direct human impact. Because viewers do not connect to numbers alone. They connect to what those numbers mean. 625 meters means fear. 2,890 meters means ambition. 1,420 meters means engineering confidence. 2 hours to 2 minutes means a real world life change. That is the sentence that survives. That is the sentence that people repeat to someone else the next day. That is the sentence that makes a story shareable because it takes something vast and makes it immediately personal. And the more you stare at the bridge, the more layered the feeling becomes. There is a river below. There is a canyon around it, ancient and indifferent and steep. There are mountains on both sides, standing where they have always stood. And then there is this immense man-made span, suspended above all of it like a refusal nobody expected to see executed at this scale. That is why the bridge photographs so well. It offers instant scale. Even viewers who know nothing about civil engineering understand the feeling immediately. There is supposed to be no road here. That is exactly why the road matters. It exists in a place where common sense would have said no, where geography would have said no, where the canyon itself, with all its depth and darkness and unforgiving walls, would have said no. And the bridge said yes anyway, and proved it. This is also why the story is bigger than a record. Yes, it was the world's highest bridge at opening. Yes, it has a main span that puts it into elite territory globally. Yes, it was tested rigorously before a single vehicle crossed. But all of those facts point to one bigger idea. When a country commits to connecting difficult terrain, the result can become both completely practical and deeply iconic at the same time. Huajiang is a bridge that moves people across a canyon and moves the perception of what building in extreme terrain can look like. That is the angle your audience will feel. Not, look at this bridge, but look at what happens when humans refuse to accept geography as the final answer. Because that is what this really is. A refusal. A large, expensive, precisely engineered, load-tested, world record-setting refusal. A refusal to let a canyon stay isolated. A refusal to let a 2-hour crossing remain a 2-hour crossing. A refusal to treat a mountain as a permanent barrier rather than an engineering problem that has not been solved yet. A refusal to believe that the sky is too high for a road, and that is the line you build toward. At the end, do not just tell viewers it is the world's highest bridge. Tell them what that really means. It means a region got faster. It means people got time back. It means the impossible became the morning commute. It means one of the harshest landscapes in the world was forced to cooperate with human design, not eventually, not partially, but completely. That is the moment. That is the feeling. That is the shot. A bridge hanging above the canyon at dusk, lights on, traffic moving, mountains falling into darkness behind it, and the whole structure glowing like a line drawn between two worlds that used to have no connection and now have one that will last. Because once you understand the scale of what was built here, you stop seeing a bridge. You start seeing proof. Proof that the canyon was never the limit. The limit was only ever what we had not yet decided to build.